6 times a year, the serene central Piedmont of North Carolina becomes a battleground. The men who survive this final exercise will join the elite ranks of the Army's Green Berets. And we were granted rare access to observe the 118 soldiers on the brink of becoming Special Forces.
You want to go? Yep, let's go.
A documentary that details an historic prosecution of rape as a war crime. It is the too-real story of the horrors of Rwanda, the courtroom drama, and survivors who found the courage to testify.
They killed our family, they destroyed our houses, and after that, after finishing my family, killing all of them, they abused me.
In 9 states, convicted felons can only get back the right to vote if they're individually approved by the governor or a court. When Democrat Terry McAuliffe became Virginia's governor in 2014, he restored the right to vote for 18,000 felons.
What were your concerns?
A database was just dumped into the voter system, and it wasn't vetted, it wasn't looked at, it wasn't scrubbed.
Hello, I'm Scott Thuman in for Cheryl Atkinson. Welcome to Full Measure. This week, the battle began to retake the Iraqi city of Mosul from ISIS fighters, and U.S. Special Operations Forces are acting as spotters for targeted airstrikes. Special ops are more frequently the tip of the spear in U.S. military operations, and they are now in greater demand than ever before. So what does it take to be the best of the best? Well, we traveled to an imaginary war zone to observe a real exercise in the making of a Green Beret. 6 times a year, the serene central Piedmont of North Carolina becomes a battleground. Stretching across 19 counties and 10,000 square miles, the men who survive this final exercise will join the elite ranks of the Army's Green Berets. The drill is called Robin Sage, and we were granted rare access to observe the 118 soldiers on the brink of becoming Special Forces.
You want to go? Yep, let's go.
There is no tougher scenario in the military than to go through Robin Sage.
Lieutenant Colonel Eric Wheeler is an instructor at Robin Sage. He's been a Green Beret for 13 years and served 6 deployments in Iraq.
So someone who's never been versed on what a Green Beret is or what Robin Sage means, they might make some gross assumption that you guys are the guys who are out there just kicking down doors. You would say,
Green Berets are Special Forces soldiers of character who are comfortable operating in ambiguous, decentralized, and hostile environments.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
I think it's interesting that Green Berets are much more than just muscle.
They are much more than muscle. So it's a combination of knowing when to smile, when to negotiate, and when to pull the trigger.
All skills honed for the last 60 years in a new country west of I-95 and south of Virginia.
All of our training for Robin Sage is actually through a fictitious land called Pineland, of course.
And this is Pineland.
This is Pineland.
We are in a guerrilla base camp in Pineland where these Green Beret trainees, whose faces we cannot show, are helping the locals mount a resistance to the United Province of Atlantica, which has overrun Pineland.
We plan and we go through what it takes, the steps to get these fighters ready.
North all left. Door.
Training a local militia to stand up to an unwanted occupier is the Green Berets' primary mission. This training goes from a fictional land to action in the real world with real names like Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Kenny Tyndall's one of dozens of volunteers who lends his farmland.
When you go rushing into a building and it's just a baited ambush, it's a no-win situation sometimes for them, but sometimes we hope it teaches them certain things about trust and building rapport.
What you teach them here, does that make a possibly life-changing difference when they're down line?
We certainly hope it does, because if it doesn't, you know, you're going to get killed.
You got 2 over here. Let's get these pictures.
The training of a Green Beret is to train other countries, you know, to put their soldiers on line.
goal of this day's exercise against an overwhelming force of volunteers posing as enemy combatants is for them to realize they are in over their heads and to retreat, which they do with 2 wounded. The Army Special Forces became known as Green Berets in 1961, when President John Kennedy toured Fort Bragg, watched their tactics, and noting their headgear, sent their commander a letter stating the challenge of this new form of operations is a real one. I'm sure that the Green Beret will be a mark of distinction in the trying times ahead. Kennedy sent 400 Green Berets to Vietnam to train the South Vietnamese soldiers in the fight against the communist-backed Viet Cong guerrillas. Since Vietnam, the Green Berets have specialized in counterinsurgency and guerrilla warfare. If conventional warfare looks like the shock and awe of Operation Iraqi Freedom, then it's the unconventional warfare that the Green Berets do best. They were one of the lead responders in Afghanistan. Months before troops and tanks arrived, the Green Berets were organizing and training the tribal leaders, fighting like natives alongside the Northern Alliance.
Down here along our southern border.
Back in Pineland, the United States Army has amassed a conventional force along the southern border. Led by Major General James Linder, the forces are updated by the trainees about how their covert support of the local resistance is going.
We got to hang in there, hold out for the help. I know help's coming.
We're selecting soldiers who are going to go out in small teams in environments where there are no absolute answers, and they're going to be independent, and they're going to have to figure out how to problem solve on their own.
Problems like a helicopter that has unexpectedly bombed their base camp.
So give me 2 patients that are ready to go.
Or an enemy that has inflicted mass civilian casualties.
Hey, I got a strong radio pulse.
And that's the real world, too, though.
That's the real world. Much of what we see today in the areas that we're operating, executing the Army's task of special warfare, is what we see these soldiers doing.
Why is what's happening here in these woods so important to the future of how the U.S. military handles all the challenges we face?
Experiences that you learn in Robin Sage build upon a Rolodex of experiences that kind of roll around in the back of your head. Robin Sage is all about a series of dilemmas that is posed upon the student where there might not be right or wrong answers, and just consequences to the decisions.
There are plenty of real-world consequences. On August 23rd, Staff Sergeant Matthew Thompson, a Green Beret serving in Afghanistan, was killed by a roadside bomb, a loss that Sergeant Major Roberto Oquendo, a fellow Green Beret, says is immeasurable.
It hurts, you know, and even if you don't know the person personally, it's another SF brother that paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Thompson graduated from Concordia University Irvine in 2010. His classmates honored him in this flag-lowering ceremony.
It could happen to any of us, so we understand that when we come in, and when it does happen, it really hurts.
For their final test, the team we observed captured their target in a nighttime raid. They passed Robin Sage, and many of these new Green Berets will be deployed overseas within the year. Of the 118 soldiers who started Robin Sage during our visit, 101 finished and earned the Green Beret. Still ahead on Full Measure, both parties are pushing to get out the vote, hoping for an edge in the upcoming election. Cheryl takes a close look at the efforts to get convicted felons to the polls.